The soft evening light filtered through the tall windows of Blue Harbor Restaurant, casting golden shadows across the polished wooden floors. The place buzzed with the gentle hum of quiet conversations and the occasional clink of expensive crystal. This wasn't just any dining spot. It was the kind where you needed to book months ahead and where the cheapest bottle of wine cost more than most people's weekly grocery bill. Lily Chen hurried between tables, her steps quick but careful on the marble floor. At 24, she wasn't supposed to be here serving tables. Not with her background, not with her talent. But life had other plans, and those plans included putting her dreams on a shelf while reality demanded her full attention. "Table 7 needs more water," whispered Thomas, one of the other servers, as they passed each other. He glanced at her with tired eyes. "And watch out, the Reed party is in the private room tonight." Lily nodded, feeling her stomach tighten. Everyone knew about Maxwell Reed. The tech billionaire had a reputation that preceded him everywhere he went. Stories about his demanding nature circulated among service staff across the city, like ghost stories around a campfire. Some said he once had a chef fired for using the wrong kind of salt. Others claimed he tipped thousands when pleased. The problem was figuring out what would please him. "They brought in a piano," Tomas added, adjusting his bow tie. "Some fancy baby grand that cost more than we'll make in 10 years. Just sitting there for show?" Lily froze for just a moment, then continued filling water glasses. "A piano. Of course there would be a piano." 3 years ago, Lily had been on a completely different path. Her fingers had danced across piano keys at Westfield Conservatory, not carried trays of overpriced appetizers. Music critics had written about her. Remarkable promise and emotional depth beyond her. Years. She had been 2 semesters away from completing her degree when everything changed. The call had come during a practice session. Her mother's voice, usually so steady and strong, had trembled as she explained the diagnosis. Stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive. Treatment needed to begin immediately. Without hesitation, Lily had packed her bags, withdrawn from school, and moved back home. Her mother had sacrificed everything to support her musical education, working double shifts and never missing a recital. Now it was Lily's turn to be there for her. The health insurance covered some costs, but not all. The bills piled up. One job turned into 2, then 3. The hours she once spent practicing Chopin and Liszt were now filled with serving food, processing medical claims, and helping her mother through the worst days of chemo. "Chen, stop daydreaming." The sharp voice of Mr. Whitaker, the floor manager, snapped her back to the present. His perpetually furrowed brow made him look like he had just bitten into something sour. "The Reed party needs their first course served. Everyone on deck now." The private dining room at Blue Harbor was reserved for only the most elite customers. Tonight it had been transformed for Maxwell Reed's gathering. Something about celebrating a company milestone or acquisition. Lily wasn't sure of the details, only that the event was costing more than she would make in a year. As she entered carrying a tray of delicate appetizers, tiny towers of seafood and microgreens that looked more like art than food, her eyes were immediately drawn to the piano. It sat in the corner, gleaming under the chandeliers. A Steinway, she realized, similar to the one she had practiced on for countless hours at the conservatory. "Careful with those," hissed Whitaker as he supervised the servers. "Each plate costs more than your hourly wage." Lily moved gracefully between guests, setting down plates with practiced precision. The room contained about 20 people, all dressed in clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Men in tailored suits and women draped in jewelry that caught the light with every movement. They barely glanced at her. Servers were meant to be invisible after all. Maxwell Reed sat at the head of the main table. He wasn't what Lily had expected. In her mind, she had pictured someone older, perhaps stern-looking. Instead, Reed appeared to be in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and the confident posture of someone who had never worried about making rent. He laughed loudly at something one of his guests said, his hand casually swirling a glass of amber liquid. For the next 2 hours, Lily and the other servers moved in a choreographed dance of service, removing plates, pouring wine, delivering courses. The evening progressed smoothly, the guests growing more relaxed and louder as bottles emptied. "I hear you used to be quite the piano player," a voice said, stopping Lily in her tracks. She turned to find one of the older servers, Hector, standing nearby. "Who told you that?" she asked, keeping her voice low. Hector shrugged. Thomas mentioned something. Said you had some music scholarship before. He trailed off awkwardly. Before real life happened, Lily finished for him. It was a long time ago. Shame about that beauty just sitting there unused. Hector nodded toward the piano. Heard they paid extra to have it tuned this morning. Lily looked at the instrument longingly. How long had it been since she'd played on a proper piano? The digital keyboard in her tiny apartment wasn't the same. She practiced when she could, usually late at night with headphones, clinging to the techniques her professors had drilled into her. Some days she could almost convince herself she hadn't lost her edge. Other days reality was harder to ignore. We need champagne for the toast, called Whitaker, clapping his hands. Everyone move! The night continued, and Lily tried not to look at the piano again. It was just after dessert had been served when it happened. Reed, now visibly tipsy from hours of drinking, suddenly raised his voice. This is supposed to be a celebration, he announced to the room. We just closed the biggest deal of the quarter, and everyone's acting like we're at a funeral. Where's the music? Why isn't anyone playing that damn piano I paid to have brought in? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Reed looked around expectantly. Anyone play? He asked his guests. A few nervous laughs, but no volunteers. Whitaker stepped forward, ever the problem solver. Mr. Reed, we could stream some music through the sound system if you'd prefer. No, Reed waved him off. I didn't pay for a recording. That piano is here for a reason. His eyes scanned the room, moving past guests until they landed on the servers standing against the wall. Something in his expression changed. You, he said, pointing directly at Lily. You look like you might play. Lily felt her heart skip. How could he possibly know? Was it just a lucky guess? Antonio, Reed called to a man sitting nearby. Didn't you say something about a server here being some kind of music student? A younger man in an expensive suit looked uncomfortable. I may have mentioned it. My cousin works in administration at Westfield. When we booked the venue, he recognized the name of one of the employees here. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. The room seemed to spin slightly. Of course, small world connections. The kind that happened all the time among the wealthy. So it is you, Reed said, his eyes narrowing with interest. What was it? Lou? Lily, she corrected automatically, then wished she hadn't. Lily, Reed repeated, seeming pleased with himself. I'm told you were quite the prodigy. Why don't you play something for us? Every eye in the room turned to her. Whitaker looked panicked, clearly torn between not wanting to upset a valuable client and not wanting a server to step out of place. I'm working. Sir, Lily said quietly. And I'm paying, Reed countered. His tone wasn't exactly unkind, but there was an edge to it, the voice of someone unused to hearing the word no. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a money clip that made several people in the room intake their breath sharply. Peeling off several large bills, he placed them on the table. Consider this a special request, he said. $1,000 for 5 minutes of your time. Lily stared at the money. $1,000. That would cover her mother's copay for the next round of treatment. It would mean not having to pick up extra shifts next week when Mom had her appointment. Her hesitation must have been visible, because Reed added more bills to the stack. $2,000, he said, as casually as if he were leaving a standard tip. The room had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch the scene unfold. Whitaker's face had turned an interesting shade of red, but he remained silent. Lily thought about the piano in the corner, about the hours she'd spent practicing until her fingers cramped, about the dreams she'd put aside, about her mother asking just last week if she ever missed playing, and how she'd lied and said she was too busy to think about it. 5 minutes, she finally said, her voice stronger than she expected. As she walked toward the piano, she felt as if she were moving through a dream. The short distance seemed to stretch forever. Behind her, she could hear whispers, probably bets being placed on whether the server was about to embarrass herself. The bench felt familiar as she sat down. Adjusting it slightly, she placed her hands on the keys and felt the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. It had been so long since she'd touched an instrument of this quality. For a moment, she just sat there, eyes closed, gathering her courage. The room waited. Well? Came Reed's impatient voice. Are we paying for silence? Lily opened her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. Lily's fingers hovered over the keys for just a moment longer. The weight of 20 pairs of eyes pressed down on her shoulders. In that instant, she considered playing something simple, a basic classical piece that wouldn't risk too much. Then something shifted inside her. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was 3 years of buried dreams fighting their way to the surface. Or maybe it was just the thought of her mother saying, "Don't hide your light even when you're scared." Her hands came down, and the first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the room. It was a bold choice, a technically demanding piece that began deceptively simple before building into emotional complexity. Not something casual pianists attempted, but it was the last piece she had performed before leaving school, and her muscles remembered what her conscious mind worried it had forgotten. The opening notes were tentative as her fingers reacquainted themselves with the proper touch. For the first few measures, she was painfully aware of her audience, of Reed's smirking face, of Whitaker's nervous hovering near the door. Then gradually the world around her began to fade. The piano responded to her touch like an old friend. This wasn't her cheap keyboard with plastic keys and tinny sound. This was a Steinway, an instrument that could whisper, sing, or roar depending on what you asked of it. And Lily was asking it to help her remember who she used to be. As she moved into the more demanding sections, her confidence grew. Her back straightened, her shoulders relaxed, and her face softened into an expression of deep concentration. The technical challenges that had once required hours of practice now flowed from her fingers as naturally as breathing. Across the room, expressions began to change. The polite, slightly uncomfortable smiles expecting amateur fumbling transformed into looks of genuine surprise. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A woman with a champagne glass halfway to her lips forgot to complete the motion. 2 waiters who had been about to exit the room paused in the doorway, trays still in hand. Maxwell Reed's smirk had vanished. He leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing as if trying to solve a puzzle. He had expected entertainment, perhaps some fumbling attempt at Fur-Elise or a simple pop song. What he was getting instead was a conservatory-level performance from someone in a server's uniform. Lily was no longer in the dining room. In her mind, she was back in the practice hall at Westfield, working through the piece as her professor nodded approval from across the room. "Feel it here," he would say, tapping his chest. "Before your fingers can speak, your heart must have something to say." And her heart had plenty to say tonight. About dreams deferred, about watching your life take turns you never expected, about playing lullabies for her mother on the nights when the pain was too much for sleep to come easily. The piece built toward its thunderous middle section, and Lily gave herself permission to unleash everything she'd been holding back. Her small frame seemed to grow larger as she leaned into the keys, her hands flying across the keyboard with the precision and passion that had once made her professors predict a brilliant career. In the corner of her awareness, she heard a gasp from someone in the room. Then another, but she didn't break her concentration. The music carried her forward, each note connecting to the next with inevitable purpose. Hector, who had been serving drinks, nearly dropped a bottle of champagne. Whitaker, the manager who had only ever seen Lily as a competent but unremarkable server, stood with his mouth slightly open. Thomas had slipped into the room and was recording discreetly on his phone, his eyes wide with disbelief. As for the guests, the wealthy, powerful people who had barely acknowledged Lily's existence all evening, they sat transfixed. One woman in an elegant blue dress had tears streaming silently down her cheeks. An older gentleman with a distinguished beard was nodding in time with the music, his eyes closed in appreciation. Antonio, the man who had revealed Lily's background, looked both vindicated and stunned. "I told you she was good," he whispered to Reed, "but I had no idea she was this good." Reed didn't respond. He couldn't take his eyes off Lily's hands as they moved across the keyboard with a grace and authority that spoke of thousands of hours of dedication. Unknown to Lily, among Reed's guests was Eleanor Wong, the newly appointed director of the City Symphony Orchestra. She had come as a courtesy to a donor, expecting nothing more than a pleasant dinner and some networking. Now she was witnessing what could only be described as hidden brilliance. Her trained ear recognized not just technical skill, but that rarer quality, a genuine musical voice with something unique to say. As Lily approached the piece's challenging coda, the most technically difficult section, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. The rapid runs and complex fingerwork demanded absolute focus and years of training. Without regular practice, this was the part where even talented pianists might falter. Lily's world had narrowed to just her hands and the keys. The muscle memory was there, buried beneath years of carrying trays and filling water glasses, but still alive. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, drawing sounds from the piano that made it seem alive, joyful, mournful, questioning, and finally triumphant. When the final notes resonated through the room, Lily kept her hands on the keys for a long moment, her eyes closed, her breathing quick. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the room erupted. Applause burst forth. Not polite, obligatory clapping, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. Several people had risen to their feet. Thomas was whistling from the doorway until Whitaker shot him a look. The kitchen staff, who had gathered to listen, were cheering from the hallway. Lily opened her eyes, startled by the response. The world came rushing back, the dining room, the guests, her uniform, her job. Reality crashed over her like a cold wave. Her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. She stood quickly, smoothing her apron with trembling hands. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely audible over the continued applause. As she turned to hurry back to her position, trying to become invisible once more, Eleanor Wong was already moving toward the piano with purpose in her steps. "Wait," she called out, her authoritative voice cutting through the noise. "Please wait." Lily froze, worried she had somehow broken protocol despite the positive reaction. Maybe playing with such intensity was considered inappropriate in this setting. Maybe she should have chosen something lighter, more suitable for background music. But when Eleanor reached her, there was nothing but admiration in her eyes. "Where did you study?" she asked without preamble. "Westfield," Lily answered, surprised by the question. "For almost 3 years, but I didn't finish." Eleanor nodded as if confirming something to herself. "I'm Eleanor Wong. I direct the City Symphony." Lily's eyes widened in recognition. Eleanor Wong was a legend in classical music circles, a pioneer for women conductors and known for her innovative programming. "I know who you are, Ms. Wong," Lily said, her voice steadier now. "I've followed your career since I was in high school, yet I'm just learning about yours," Eleanor replied with a small smile. She reached into her purse and extracted a business card. "We should talk, soon." Before Lily could respond, Maxwell Reed appeared at Eleanor's side. The initial shock had left his face, replaced by something harder to read, a mixture of admiration and calculation. "Well," he said, looking at Lily with new eyes. That was unexpected. Lily wasn't sure how to respond. Should she apologize? Thank him? Go back to serving dessert? Reed solved her dilemma by pulling out his money clip again. But instead of the $2,000 he had promised, he was counting out significantly more. "I believe in rewarding exceptional talent," he said, handing her a stack of bills that made Lily's eyes widen. Even when it comes from unexpected places, Lily hesitated before accepting the money. "Thank you," she said quietly, thinking of her mother's medical bills and how this unexpected windfall would help. "Don't thank me," Reed replied. "Just answer a question." His eyes were intense now, businesslike. "Why are you serving tables instead of playing concerts?" The directness of the question caught Lily off guard. It wasn't asked unkindly, but with the bluntness of someone used to cutting to the heart of matters. "Life happens," she said simply. "My mom got sick. Bills needed paying. Music became a luxury I couldn't afford." Reed nodded slowly, processing this information. Before he could respond, Whitaker approached, looking both impressed and anxious to restore normal service. "Ms. Chen, perhaps you should take a short break," he suggested, though his tone made it clear this wasn't really a suggestion. "When you return, we'll need help with the dessert course." The message was clear. Moment over, back to work. The brief glimpse into Lily's other life was to be tucked away, the server's mask put back in place. But as Lily nodded and moved toward the kitchen, she realized something had fundamentally changed. The weight of the business card in her pocket and the money in her hand were tangible reminders that sometimes life could surprise you twice, once by taking away your dreams, and once by offering an unexpected path back to them. Behind her, she could hear Eleanor Wong already engaged in intense conversation with Reed. She caught fragments: obvious talent, criminal waste, and fellowship program. In the kitchen, away from the guests' eyes, the staff surrounded her with excited questions and congratulations. Hector gave her a fist bump. Thomas showed her the video he'd captured, already getting hundreds of views on his social media. Even the stern head chef emerged from his station to give her a nod of respect. "So?" Thomas asked with a grin. "Are you going to quit tomorrow or wait until the end of the week?" Lily laughed, but the question lingered in her mind as she washed her hands and prepared to return to work. For the first time in 3 years, quitting actually seemed like a possibility. Not immediately. Her mother still needed care, bills still needed paying. But perhaps the path forward had just changed course. As she picked up a tray of desserts, she allowed herself a small smile. Whatever came next for 5 minutes tonight, she had remembered what it felt like to be fully herself. And from the business card in her pocket and the buzz still rippling through the restaurant, it seemed that others had remembered along with her. The next morning, Lily woke to her phone buzzing with notifications. Thomas's video had gone viral overnight. The 15-second clip showed her hunched over the piano, lost in the music, her server's uniform contrasting sharply with the elegant notes flowing from her fingers. The caption read, "When the restaurant makes you play piano for rich people, but you're actually a hidden genius." Lily groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. She hadn't asked for this attention. After the performance, she had finished her shift in a daze, returning to serving desserts and clearing plates while fielding odd looks from guests and co-workers alike. The small apartment she shared with her mother was quiet. It was just past 7 and Mom would still be asleep. The medications made her drowsy in the mornings. Lily slipped out of bed and put on the kettle, trying to process everything that had happened the night before. The money Reed had given her sat on the kitchen table. $5,000, more than 2 months' wages. She still couldn't quite believe it. Part of her worried there was something inappropriate about accepting it, but the practical side of her knew what this money meant. Breathing room. Her mother's next treatment was covered. The overdue electric bill could be paid. Maybe they could even fix the car that had been sitting useless in their building's parking lot for the last 3 months. As the kettle whistled, Lily's phone rang. "Unknown number, hello?" She answered cautiously. "Is this Lily Chen?" The voice was professional, female. "Yes. This is she." "This is Denise Richards from KBTV Morning News. We saw a video of your performance last night, and we'd love to have you on our show tomorrow to talk about it. Your story is exactly the kind of uplifting content our viewers love." Lily nearly dropped the phone. What? How did you get this number?" "Your coworker Thomas provided it." "So can we count on you for tomorrow morning? It would just be a 5-minute segment, very casual." Lily's mind raced. ITV appearance. She wasn't prepared for this kind of attention. "I'm sorry, I need to think about it. Can I call you back?" After getting Denise's number and ending the call, Lily leaned against the kitchen counter, breathing heavily. She glanced at the worn digital keyboard in the corner of the living room, the poor substitute for a real piano she practiced on when she could find the time. Next to it was a framed photo of her at 17, standing proudly next to her piano teacher after winning a youth competition. What's with all the phone beeping? Her mother's voice came from the doorway of the small bedroom they shared. Lily turned to see Mei Chen standing there in her robe. Her hair shorter since the treatments, but her eyes as bright and perceptive as ever. "Mom, you should be resting." Mei waved away the concern. "I've been resting for months. Tell me what's happening. You came home so late last night I was already asleep." Lily poured 2 cups of tea and led her mother to their small table. As they sat, she recounted the events of the previous night. Reed's demand. Her performance, the reaction, the money, Eleanor Wong's business card, and now the call from the local news station. Mei listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider. When Lily finished, she reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "You played in public again," she said softly. "How did it feel?" The question caught Lily off guard. She had expected her mother to focus on the money or the potential opportunities. But of course Mei would understand what really mattered. It felt like coming home, Lily admitted, her voice catching. "Like I found a piece of myself I thought I'd lost for good." Mei nodded, her eyes glistening. "I have watched you put your dreams on hold for me. Every day it breaks my heart a little." "Mom, don't..." "Let me finish," Mei said gently. "You have been the most devoted daughter anyone could ask for. But I never wanted my illness to bury your gift. Maybe this is the universe giving you a second chance. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Whitaker from the restaurant. "Chen," he said when she answered, his voice unusually respectful. "I need you to come in early today. Mr. Reed has been calling all morning. He wants to speak with you." "About what?" He wouldn't say. "Just be here by noon." After hanging up, Lily looked at her mother with concern. "I can't leave you alone all day again." "I'm not made of glass," May said with a hint of her old stubbornness. "Besides, Auntie Fang is coming over to play mahjong. Go, see what this man wants." Lily arrived at Blue Harbor just before noon. The restaurant was quiet, hours from opening for dinner service. A few staff members were setting tables, and they all paused to watch as she walked in. She felt self-conscious in her simple jeans and sweater, so different from her uniform. Whitaker was waiting by the entrance, looking nervous. "He's in the private dining room. Just be professional." The warning seemed unnecessary, but Lily nodded anyway. The private room looked different in daylight, smaller somehow with the previous night's magic faded. The piano still stood in the corner, lid closed now. Maxwell Reed sat at a table with Eleanor Wong and another man Lily didn't recognize. "Ah, Ms. Chen," Reed stood as she entered. "Thank you for coming. Please join us." Lily sat cautiously, noting that Reed seemed different today, more focused, less of the casual arrogance from the night before. "This is David Lin." Reed gestured to the unfamiliar man. "He's my personal attorney, and you've already met Eleanor." Eleanor Wong gave Lily a warm smile. "I've been telling Maxwell about our fellowship program at the orchestra." Reed tapped his fingers on the table impatiently. "Let me be direct, Ms. Chen. Last night you demonstrated extraordinary talent. Talent that is clearly being wasted in food service, no offense to this establishment." Lily stiffened slightly. "I'm grateful for this job. It's allowed me to support my mother through her illness." "Admirable," Reed nodded. "But what if you didn't have to choose between your responsibilities and your gift?" He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a document with legal language Lily couldn't quite follow. "I'm proposing to establish a scholarship," Reed explained. "The Reed Foundation Arts Fellowship. You would be its first recipient. It would cover your remaining education at Westfield, or any conservatory of your choice, plus a living stipend for you and healthcare assistance for your mother." Lily stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" Reed leaned back, considering her question. "I've made billions identifying undervalued assets, Ms. Chen. You are, quite frankly, an undervalued asset in the world of classical music. I believe in investing where I see potential returns." "He means," Eleanor interrupted, shooting Reed a look, "that talent like yours deserves cultivation. The fellowship would include a position with our community outreach program, teaching underprivileged children." Lily's mind was spinning. It seemed too good to be true. "And what would you expect in return?" she asked Reed cautiously. "Progress reports, occasional performances at foundation events, and eventually, when you're ready, a debut recital sponsored by the foundation. David can explain the details." As the attorney began outlining terms, Lily felt a strange mixture of hope and suspicion. People didn't just hand out life-changing opportunities without expecting something in return. "Why me?" she asked, interrupting the lawyer's explanation. "There are thousands of struggling musicians. You saw me play for 5 minutes." Reed exchanged glances with Eleanor before answering. "After you left last night, Ms. Wong and I had a long conversation about talent and opportunity. I've been looking for a meaningful way to expand my foundation's work in the arts." "Your performance was the catalyst, but the idea had been forming for some time." Eleanor nodded. "And I've been advocating for more direct support for promising musicians. The truth is, Lily, what you showed last night was special. Not just technical skill, but genuine artistic voice. That's rare. Plus," Reed added with unexpected honesty, "I've been accused of being an elitist who only supports established artists and institutions. This gives me a chance to prove otherwise." Lily almost smiled at his frankness. At least he was transparent about how this benefited his image. "I need time to think about this," she said finally, "to discuss it with my mother." "Of course," Reed handed her his card. "Call me directly with your decision." As Lily stood to leave, Eleanor followed her to the door. "Whatever you decide about Reed's offer, I hope you'll come see me at the symphony office. We have more modest programs that might interest you, with fewer strings attached." Lily nodded gratefully. Thank you. I will. Walking out of the restaurant into the bright afternoon sunlight, Lily felt as though she had stepped into someone else's life. 24 hours ago, she had been a server with buried dreams. Now possibilities were suddenly unfolding before her. Her phone buzzed with another call, the TV station again. She declined it for now. Then a text from Thomas, "You're famous. Video hit 500K views? Sienna, sorry about giving your number to the news people." Famous. The word felt strange. Lily had once dreamed of recognition for her music, but not like this. Not through a viral video of her playing in her work uniform. She walked to the bus stop slowly, trying to sort through her thoughts. Reed's offer was generous, life-changing even, but she couldn't shake the feeling that accepting meant giving up some control over her future. Being the public face of his foundation's generosity came with expectations. Would her story become just another feel-good narrative for wealthy donors at charity galas? On the other hand, her mother's treatment was ongoing. The money Reed had given her would help temporarily, but medical bills would continue to pile up. The fellowship would provide stability they hadn't had in years. As the bus approached, Lily realized she was clutching Eleanor Wong's business card tightly in her hand. Perhaps there was a middle path, one where she could reclaim her music without becoming a philanthropist's project. The bus doors opened, and Lily stepped on, her mind still swirling with possibilities. For the first time in 3 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where music was at the center again. Not just a dream deferred, but a path forward. As the bus pulled away from Blue Harbor Restaurant, Lily looked back at the place where everything had changed. Whatever she decided, she knew one thing with certainty: she would never again let her gift stay hidden. The music that had burst forth last night after years of silence demanded to be heard. And this time, she would make sure the world listened on her own terms. The small apartment was quiet except for the gentle clicking of mahjong tiles. Lily sat across from her mother and Auntie Fang, watching them play but barely registering the game. Her mind was still at the restaurant, replaying the conversation with Reed and Eleanor Wong. "You're a million miles away," May observed, placing a tile on the table. "Have you made your decision?" Lily sighed and pushed Reed's business card across the table. "It's a lot of money, Mom. And the healthcare benefits would cover all your treatments." Auntie Fang, who had been briefed on the situation, clicked her tongue. "Rich people always want something in return. What's the catch?" "That's what I keep asking myself," Lily admitted. "On paper it sounds perfect, but I'd be tied to his foundation, his events. I'd be Reed Foundation scholar Lily Chen everywhere I went." May studied her daughter's face. "And this bothers you?" "I don't know," Lily said, running her finger along the edge of the table. "For 3 years I've been focused on survival, paying bills, making sure you got your treatments. I haven't allowed myself to think beyond that. Now suddenly I have options, and I don't know which path is mine and which is someone else's idea of what my path should be." Auntie Fang snorted. "Girl, when opportunity knocks, you don't ask which door you like better. You open it before it goes away." "It's not that simple," Lily protested. "There's the symphony option, too. Eleanor Wong said they have programs with fewer strings attached. Smaller, but maybe more freedom." "Freedom won't pay hospital bills," Auntie Fang pointed out bluntly. May shot her friend a look before turning back to Lily. "What does your heart tell you?" Lily got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawled below their 8th-floor apartment. Somewhere out there was Westfield Conservatory, where she had once belonged. Somewhere else was the Symphony Hall where Eleanor Wong conducted. And in another direction was Blue Harbor Restaurant, where everything had changed in a single evening. "My heart wants to play again," she said simply. "Really play, not just squeeze in practice between shifts. But I don't want to be a charity case or a publicity stunt." Her phone buzzed on the table, another call from the TV station. "That made 5 today. You should talk to them," May suggested. "Tell your story your way before others tell it for you." Lily considered this. The video was already out there, viewed hundreds of thousands of times. People were already forming their own narratives about who she was and what had happened. Perhaps her mother was right. "Okay," she said, picking up the phone. "I'll call them back." The next morning found Lily sitting in a brightly lit television studio, trying not to squint under the hot lights. She wore her nicest blouse, a blue one her mother had insisted brought out her eyes, and kept wiping her sweaty palms on her dark pants. We're on in 3, 2, 1. The floor director pointed, and the host's expression switched instantly to dazzling smiles. Welcome back to KBTV Morning News. I'm Nora Bell, and I'm Peter Washington. Today we're joined by Lily Chen, whose extraordinary piano performance at Blue Harbor Restaurant has taken social media by storm. Lily, welcome. Lily smiled nervously. Thank you for having me. Nora leaned forward with practiced interest. For those who haven't seen the video, though it's gotten over 1 million views now, you were working as a server when a customer asked you to play the piano. What happened there? Lily took a deep breath, remembering her mother's advice to tell her own story. I was serving at a private event for Maxwell Reed. He'd had a piano brought in and somehow found out I used to study music. He encouraged me to play. Encouraged? Peter raised an eyebrow. The caption on the video suggests you were pressured. It was complicated, Lily admitted. In the service industry, when wealthy clients make requests, there's an unspoken expectation to comply. But looking back, I'm grateful for the push. I hadn't performed in public for 3 years. You were a student at Westfield Conservatory, Nora noted, glancing at her prep notes. Why did you leave? Lily's hands twisted in her lap. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. I needed to care for her and help with medical bills. Music became a luxury we couldn't afford. The hosts exchanged the practiced, sympathetic glances that morning show professionals had perfected. And now? Peter prompted. We've heard rumors that Mr. Reed has offered you some kind of scholarship. News traveled fast. Lily nodded cautiously. Mr. Reed has generously offered to establish a fellowship that would allow me to complete my education and help with my mother's health care. That's incredible, Nora exclaimed. A true Cinderella story. Will you accept? Lily hesitated. I'm still considering my options. It's a wonderful opportunity, but I want to make sure I'm making the right choice for my future. I understand you've also been approached by Eleanor Wong from the City Symphony? Peter asked. Yes, Lily confirmed, surprised they knew this detail. There are several paths forward, and I'm grateful for all of them. Well, we have a special surprise for you today, Nora said with a dramatic pause. We have a piano right here in the studio, and our viewers have been requesting a live performance. Would you do us the honor? Lily hadn't expected this. She glanced at the grand piano positioned nearby, gleaming under the studio lights. For a moment, she considered refusing. This wasn't part of the agreement when she'd accepted the interview, but then she thought about what her mother had said. Tell your story, your way. Perhaps this was how, not through words, but through music. I'd be happy to, she said, rising from her chair. As she settled at the piano, adjusting the bench by muscle memory, Lily made a split-second decision. Instead of repeating Chopin, she would play something different, something that spoke to her current situation. Her fingers found the keys, and the opening notes of Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata filled the studio. The piece began with heavy, dramatic chords that gave way to a delicate, questioning melody, a musical depiction of struggle followed by hope. It seemed fitting for her journey. As she played, Lily was vaguely aware of cameras moving around her, capturing different angles. But unlike at the restaurant where she had been lost in memories, this time she remained fully present. This was her choice, her statement. When she finished, the small studio audience erupted in applause. The hosts approached, their expressions genuinely impressed beneath their professional veneers. That was absolutely beautiful, Nora said, dabbing at her eye with a tissue. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily Chen. After the segment ended and Lily was escorted to the lobby, she found a surprise waiting. Eleanor Wong stood by the reception desk, a gentle smile on her face. That was lovely, she said by way of greeting. Beethoven suits you, you saw? Lily asked, surprised. Eleanor nodded. I was in a meeting upstairs and heard you were here. I caught the end of your performance. She gestured toward the exit. Do you have time for coffee? I'd like to talk to you about something specific. 20 minutes later, they were seated in a quiet cafe across from the TV station. Eleanor stirred her tea thoughtfully. Reed's offer is generous, she began without preamble, and you'd be foolish not to consider it seriously. But before you decide, I wanted you to understand exactly what we're offering at the symphony. She pulled out a folder similar to the one Reed had presented, but thinner. We can't match his financial support, but what we can offer is integration, not just education, but real-world experience. A part-time position with our youth program, mentorship with our pianists, and performance opportunities with smaller recitals to build your confidence and reputation. Lily skimmed the documents. The stipend was indeed much smaller than Reed's offer, but there was something appealing about the gradual, structured approach. "What about my mother's medical costs?" she asked, the practical concern unavoidable. Eleanor's expression was sympathetic but firm. "We have some health benefits for our staff, but nothing comparable to what Reed is offering. I won't pretend we can match that aspect." Lily nodded, appreciating the honesty. "There's one more thing," Eleanor added. "I've spoken with the dean at Westfield. Given your circumstances and obvious retention of skills, they're willing to offer you advanced standing if you return. You could potentially complete your degree in just over a year instead of 2. Lily's heart skipped. Westfield had strict policies about returning students. This was no small concession. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "You barely know me." Eleanor sat back, considering her answer. 30 years ago, I was a young conductor with promise. A family crisis derailed my education. Someone took a chance on me, gave me a path back. I've never forgotten that kindness." She leaned forward. "But more importantly, what I heard in that restaurant wasn't just technical skill. It was a distinct musical voice. Those are rare, and when I find one, I feel obligated to nurture it. Properly. Not as a sideshow." The last words hung between them. Eleanor's implicit criticism of Reed's approach clear. "Thank you," Lily said finally. "This gives me a lot to think about." After parting ways with Eleanor, Lily walked through the downtown streets, her mind churning. The TV appearance had given her a taste of public attention, both exhilarating and uncomfortable. Reed's offer promised financial security, but potential loss of artistic identity. Eleanor's path offered artistic integrity but financial uncertainty. Her phone rang. It was Thomas. "Hey, piano star. Saw you on TV this morning. You were amazing." "Thanks," Lily said, her mind elsewhere. "Listen," Thomas continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "I thought you should know. Reed just booked the private room again for tomorrow night. Word is he's bringing some big music industry people. Everyone's saying it's because of you." Lily stopped walking. "What? He didn't mention anything about this to me. Just thought you should know," Thomas said. "Whitaker's been polishing the piano all morning." After ending the call, Lily stood in the middle of the sidewalk, people flowing around her like a river around a stone. Reed was already making plans involving her without consultation. Was this a preview of what accepting his offer would mean? As she resumed walking, her path took her past a small music shop. In the window sat a simple upright piano. Nothing like the gleaming Steinway at the restaurant, but a real piano nonetheless. On impulse, she entered the shop. An hour later, she was arranging delivery of the modestly priced used piano to her apartment. It would take most of Reed's initial payment. But something told her this purchase, this independent choice, was necessary before she could make her final decision. That night, as her mother slept, Lily sat at her computer, looking at photographs of herself from her Westfield days. Happy, confident, focused on a clear path forward. Then she looked at more recent photos, tired, stressed, but resilient. Both versions were her. Neither was complete on its own. Tomorrow she would call Reed and Eleanor. Tomorrow she would choose a path forward. But tonight, she would wait for the delivery of her own piano, a small declaration of independence, regardless of whose offer she ultimately accepted, because whatever stage she played on next, whether prestigious concert hall or local community center, she needed to ensure the music remained genuinely hers. The delivery truck arrived just after 9 the next morning. 2 men carefully navigated the upright piano up the narrow stairwell to the 8th-floor apartment, grumbling about buildings without service elevators. Lily hovered anxiously, directing them to the perfect spot near the window where morning light would fall across the keys. When they finally left, Lily stood before the piano, running her fingers lightly over the wood finish. It wasn't new or particularly fancy, a well-loved instrument with minor scratches and a slightly worn bench. But it was hers. Not borrowed, not part of someone else's agenda. Hers. May emerged from the bedroom, still in her robe, her eyes widening at the sight. "You didn't tell me it was coming today," she said, moving closer to inspect the piano. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Lily replied, sitting on the bench and lifting the cover to reveal the keys. "It's not a Steinway, but..." It's perfect, May finished, resting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Have you played it yet? Lily shook her head. I was waiting for you. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the subtle difference in touch compared to the restaurant's grand piano. Then she began to play. Not Chopin or Beethoven this time, but a simple Chinese folk song her mother had taught her when she was just 5 years old, before formal lessons and conservatories and career ambitions. The melody was sweet and uncomplicated, a song about home and belonging. May's eyes filled with tears as the familiar notes filled their small apartment. When Lily finished, her mother leaned down and kissed the top of her head. Whatever you decide, this was the right choice, she said softly. Music should live in your home, not just on stages for others. Lily nodded, understanding exactly what her mother meant. The piano was more than just an instrument. It was a declaration that music would be part of her life again, regardless of which professional path she chose. I'm meeting with Reed this afternoon, she said, closing the piano lid carefully, and Eleanor this morning. And you've made your decision? May asked. Lily smiled. I think I have. Eleanor Wong's office at the Symphony Hall was smaller than Lily had imagined, cluttered with scores, books, and framed photographs of orchestras she had conducted around the world. The woman herself sat behind a desk stacked with papers, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed something on her computer. Lily, she said warmly, looking up as her assistant showed Lily in. Thank you for coming. Lily took the offered seat, noticing the folder containing the symphony's proposal already laid out on the desk. I've been thinking about your offer, Lily began. And Mr. Reed's. Eleanor removed her glasses. And? I bought a piano yesterday, Lily said, surprising herself with this opening. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. For 3 years, I've been making decisions based only on necessity, Lily explained. What bills needed paying, which shifts would work with Mom's treatment schedule. When music left my life, I stopped making choices that weren't just about survival. She leaned forward slightly. Buying that piano was the first choice I've made in years that was just about what I wanted, what would make me happy. And it helped me realize something important, which is, Eleanor prompted, that whatever I do next has to be my choice, not because it pays the most or looks best on paper, but because it's the path that feels right to me. Lily took a deep breath. Reed's offer is incredibly generous. The money would solve so many problems, but it comes with strings attached. Eleanor finished for her. Yes. When Thomas told me Reed was already organizing some kind of showcase without even consulting me, I realized that accepting his offer might mean losing control of my own story. I'd become the Waitress pianist, a narrative he created and owns. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. And our offer? Your path is harder financially, Lily acknowledged. But it feels more authentic to who I am and what I want music to be in my life. Not a spectacle or a charity case, but genuine artistic development. A smile spread across Eleanor's face. I was hoping you'd say that. She opened a drawer and pulled out a new document. Since we last spoke, I've made some calls. The Symphony Board has approved an expanded fellowship that includes a housing stipend. It's still not as much as Reed's offer, but it might help ease the financial burden. Lily stared at the revised offer, moved by Eleanor's effort. Thank you. This would make a big difference. There's something else, Eleanor continued. The hospital where your mother receives treatment has a music therapy program we partner with. As part of your fellowship, you could split your community service hours between youth education and the therapy program. You'd be at the same facility where your mother is treated. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. This thoughtful addition showed that Eleanor had really listened to her concerns, finding creative ways to address them within the symphony's more limited resources. This feels right, Lily said quietly, but I still need to talk to Reed in person. He deserves that respect after his generosity. Eleanor nodded in understanding. Of course. The offer stands whatever happens in that conversation. Blue Harbor looked different in the afternoon light. Quieter, the dining room staff preparing for the evening service. Lily was shown to the private room where Reed waited alone, checking emails on his phone. Ms. Chen? He stood as she entered, gesturing to the chair across from him. I was pleased to get your call. Lily sat, gathering her courage. Turning down millions of dollars wasn't easy, especially when the person offering it had been nothing but generous. I wanted to thank you in person, she began. Your offer is incredible, and your generosity after hearing me play was life-changing. Reed studied her face. I hear a but coming, Lily nodded. I've decided to accept a position with the symphony instead. Rather than looking angry, Reed seemed intrigued. Interesting. May I ask why? Our offer is substantially more generous financially. It is, Lily acknowledged, and the healthcare benefits for my mother would be invaluable. But the symphony's program offers something I need more right now. A chance to rebuild my relationship with music on my own terms. Reed leaned back, considering this. And you believe you couldn't do that with our foundation's support? I learned that you've organized an event tonight with music industry executives, Lily said carefully. Without discussing it with me first. Reed had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have gotten ahead of myself. That's just it, Lily explained. Your offer is wonderful, but I worry that accepting it means my story and my music become promotional materials for the foundation. I'd be the heartwarming success story at galas and fundraisers. Is that so terrible? Reed asked, though his tone suggested he already understood her concern. For some people it wouldn't be, Lily said honestly. But for me, after 3 years of putting my dreams on hold, I need to reclaim my music as my own before sharing it with the world again. Reed was silent for a moment, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the table. Finally, he nodded. I respect your decision even if I disagree with it, he said. The offer remains open should you change your mind. Thank you, Lily said sincerely. And thank you for the initial gift. It allowed me to buy a piano for my apartment.
Having music in my home again?
I can't tell you what that means. Something in Reed's expression softened. Well, at least some good came of our encounter. He stood, extending his hand. I wish you success, Ms. Chen. Perhaps I'll see you perform with the symphony someday. I hope so, Lily replied, shaking his hand. And the next time will be on my own terms. 6 months later, Lily stood in the wings of the community recital hall, listening to Eleanor Wong introduce the symphony's fellowship program. The hall wasn't large, nothing like the main symphony venue downtown, but every seat was filled for this showcase of emerging talents. Her mother sat in the front row, looking healthier than she had in months. The new treatment protocol was working well, and the reduced stress from their improved financial situation seemed to be helping too. Next to her sat Auntie Fang, and beyond them, Thomas and several other staff members from Blue Harbor who had become friends and supporters. Lily smoothed the simple black dress she had chosen for her first public recital in nearly 4 years. In her time with the symphony program, she had relearned what it meant to live as a musician, the discipline of daily practice, the joy of teaching eager children, the healing power of bringing music to hospital patients like her mother. And now, Eleanor's voice carried through the hall. I am pleased to introduce Lily Chen, pianist and music educator, performing Franz Liszt's Un Sospiro. As Lily walked onto the stage, the applause felt different from the stunned reaction at the restaurant or the manufactured enthusiasm of the TV studio. This audience had come specifically to hear music, to support young artists developing their gifts. She settled at the piano, adjusting the bench with practiced ease. Before beginning, she glanced at the program notes each fellow had been encouraged to write. Hers read simply, "This piece speaks of longing, of the distance between who we are and who we wish to become. Sometimes the journey across that distance takes unexpected turns." Lily placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The cascading arpeggios of Liszt's etude flowed from her fingers, creating the impression of a gentle sigh, un sospiro, moving through the hall. The technical challenges that had once required grueling practice now served the emotional heart of the music. As she played, Lily realized how much had changed in 6 months. The fellowship provided enough income to cover their basic needs. Teaching brought unexpected joy. Her mother's health was improving. The piano in their apartment was played daily, sometimes just for the pleasure of making music with no audience at all. Most importantly, she was charting her own course again. Not the straight path to concert pianist she had once envisioned, nor the complete detour of leaving music behind. Instead, she had found a middle way, teaching, performing, healing through music. When she finished playing, the applause was warm and genuine. As she stood to acknowledge it, she noticed a familiar face in the back row. Maxwell Reed nodded slightly in recognition, a small smile on his face. He had come after all, not as a benefactor, but simply as a member of the audience. Backstage after the recital, as she accepted congratulations from her fellow musicians, Lily's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "You were amazing. So much better than playing for rich people who don't appreciate it." Lily smiled at his enthusiasm. The truth was, she was grateful for that night at the restaurant. Reed's demand that she play had broken through years of inertia, forcing her to confront what she had lost and what might still be possible. Later that evening, as friends and family gathered in their apartment for a small celebration, Lily found a moment of quiet by her piano. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, marveling at how an instrument could become so quickly interwoven with her sense of home and self. Her mother joined her, sitting on the bench beside her. "I'm so proud of you," May said softly. "Not just for playing beautifully, but for finding your own way back to music." Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you." "That's not true," May replied. "You would have found your way eventually. Music was always waiting for you to return." As the conversation and laughter of their guests filled the small apartment, Lily thought about the strange, winding path that had led her here, from conservatory student to exhausted server to viral sensation to fellowship recipient. None of it had gone according to plan, yet somehow she had arrived exactly where she needed to be. Tomorrow, she would practice on this piano, teach her students at the community center, and play for patients in the hospital's music therapy program. It wasn't the glamorous concert career she had once imagined, but it was rich with purpose and joy. Sometimes, Lily realized, the most important concerts weren't in grand halls for paying audiences. Sometimes they happened in hospital rooms, classroom corners, or private dining rooms where someone unexpected was listening. And sometimes, the most valuable thing money could buy wasn't fame or acclaim, but simply a piano of one's own, and the freedom to play whatever music your heart demanded.